All right, good evening, everyone. And today, my main goal is to really go over the practice test one solution with you. Um, and before I start, let me just tell you what I have already released since Friday. You definitely want to make use of them for your programming test one. So number one, about your lab number one solution. So there is a walkthrough tutorial video to show you how you can develop from scratch. If you go to the lectures page. And then if you scroll down, you'll see one of the links over there is about your lab number one solution walkthrough. All right, so that's a video going from the beginning until the end. So that's definitely a very long video to watch. So I would suggest if you already got the beginning parts working, you can definitely jump to the parts you need. You can look at the video description section. You got all the timestamps to help you navigate. But if you really want to do with me from the beginning until the end, you can definitely watch the whole video. I'll leave the choice to you. But being able to do lab number one is also very important, right? And at the same time, don't forget you also are supposed to review what you did for lab zero, part one, and part two. And also all the written notes are made available to you since day one, right? You definitely want to review them, in order to get prepared for programming test one on Wednesday. And for your lab one and also practice test one, I also make the grading tests available to you. So once you have attempted both, or when you redo them, you can definitely import this grading test to really assess more thoroughly the correctness of your submission, your developments, really. Okay, I'll leave all the exercise to you, but today let's focus more on the practice test one solution. I will try to make it more like how I think you should really proceed with the test cases and also implementation. And then, of course, feel free to interrupt me if you got any part that you don't really get. I'll try to maybe visualize certain parts I think that might be worth visualizing. I'll do that for you. And then there is an important tip I want to mention as well, which is you are given 80 minutes for your programming test one. So I would say you want to go on the safer side. Let's say about 10 to 15 minutes left before your test ends. You definitely want to kind of pause whatever you're developing. Maybe you still got, for example, two or three test cases left. At that point, I think that to be on the safe side, you really want to avoid any penalty on compilation errors. In which case, in those 10 to 15 minutes, what you should really do is to uncommon all the test cases, and then try to declare all the required and necessary methods and classes just to make sure everything still compiles with the original test cases. So I'm going to demonstrate to you when I go through the solution with you. So, but you really want to watch out for that. Okay, question here. How do you access the code you submitted for your practice test? Not really. It was done in the lab test mode, so we don't really release it. But if you really want to go over your submission, feel free to drop by my office hour. I can try to retrieve that for you. But you can definitely try to redo it. You got a starter code. Also, you got a grading test. All right. Maddie, go ahead.
Hi, Professor. Sorry, I
Hi.
was wondering if you'd be able to have a bash script just as a timer because, the clocks on the Linux systems, they just show you the time. But like if we would be able to just write a bash script, have it in our home directory and run it for 80 minutes, tells you the time, is that something that'd be allowed or no?
Are you talking about during the programming test?
Yes.
Oh, you mean a timer? Yes. What we're going to do is we're going to start a timer, maybe not on your screen, but maybe on the TV. Remember in WSC, we actually got TVs around. So I'm going to start some timer over there to let you know how much time you got left. Do you think that might
Okay.
work?
Oh,
Okay.
that's perfect. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yes, yeah. So I think what I would do is also like your written test one. So every 10 to 15 minutes, I'll just remind you about how much time you got left. That can also remind you to submit your intermediate work. That's something I would do as well. Yeah, that one you don't need to worry too much. Okay, good. That's a good concern. All right. All right, guys. So let's now try to see how much time will take to get this solution done. We'll see, right? But I'll try to also explain things I think you should also know. Hopefully that also help your programming test one. Again, I cannot emphasize enough. The practice test one will be somewhere between your sorry, the actual programming test will be somewhere between your practice test one, which I'm going to go over now, and also your lab one, somewhere in between. So what you really want to do is once you have attempted the practice test one and feel confident about it, you should also go back to your lab one and do try to redo it, maybe give yourself more time, and also go back to the for example, the written notes I made available to you, point tester, and the more complex methods, you also want to make sure you know how to do them, right? That's important. All right, let's now go on. So I got my Eclipse here already. Let me just go from the beginning. So I already downloaded your starter code for practice test one. Let's start from there, right? So try to simulate what's going to happen in your test. Okay, import existing projects. And I noticed that some of you actually chose this one during the test or the mockup test. Make sure you don't do that. Select archive file, right? And browse to where the stuff is stored. Just go there and then choose it and finish, right? This one should be routine for you. Shouldn't take much time. And it is expected that the model package is empty. We're going to do something about it. And also there will be one starter test over here. And you are expecting to get compilation error simply because we haven't created anything yet in the model. So, it doesn't hurt just to get an idea how many test cases we got eventually, right? You want to pass. So if you run just JUnit test with error, just proceed. So we got 15 test cases to pass for the starter test. All right. So that's kind of you have some idea about how many you need in your actual test, like how many you will need for your 80 minutes. So I would suggest we do one thing at a time. So I would say only leave the very first test here in effects. Everything else, I will uncomment that for now. Okay, so I can just focus on one test at a time, right? Again, select the whole thing and then control / or command / if you're using a Mac. But in the really small center, it will be control / And one thing, let me emphasize again, I'll try to remind you once more. So you can see I'm gonna go one test at a time. So every time, for example, once I pass this test, I will go on and uncomment the next one over here and then try to pass it. Let's say, for example, I go all the way to, let's say, this method here. Let's say around the time I work on this one here, I notice that there's only 15 minutes left for my test period. In that case, what I should focus on will be to uncomment everything that remains for the starter test. And then what I should do is I should really just create the necessary classes and methods just to get everything compiled together with the original starter test given to me. That is so important. All right. And then some observation there about the GRE system library. So here I'm just using a like older version of the practice test. So that's something I gave before. So 1.8, you don't need to worry. So whatever you're given during the programming test, there wouldn't be any issue. You don't need to change anything for the programming test, right? All right, so for now, we only got errors from the first test. Why don't we start with that? Right, so you can see on the left-hand side, we got some error here. If you move your mouse over, it tells you that this registration cannot be resolved to be a type. So we got to create this class in the model, right? Let's do it right away. If you're worried about making typo, you should always just copy this, right? Control C, and then right click on the model package, and then I would say class. And then I can paste it, registration, right? If you really want to avoid typo, everything got to be precise. Otherwise, it wouldn't compile with the original starter tests. All right. And of course, no main method, right? Don't choose any main method for any of the classes you create in model. All right, finish. And I'm hoping that you'll remember, and you can see now the error hasn't been fixed yet because we haven't imported the class yet, right? So what you can do is you can expand the import list over here. Just hit a new line. You can say import everything from the model, right? If it's a model dot, right now it's just only registration, but we might got other classes to create later. But I can just say star. That's okay. All right. So that one's gonna save us for trouble. All right. All right, so we fixed the error there, and now this will be new keyword. So that will be the constructor. And this constructor here is expected to take 3 arguments. So we're going to define 3 parameters. And usually you should really look at the documents before that. Oh, and also there will be some beginning section over here for you to read over. All right. So that's something I'll refer back to here a little bit later, right? So for example, you can see registration system, a list of up to 500 transcript, right? That one there may be used or maybe not, right? And also each transcript is characterized by, okay, student's unique name and also up to 60, right? So these are really like a constraint on how long the arrays should be when you first create them. You want to watch out for that. And we'll come back here when we need it. All right. And let's now see the first one. So here you can see the 4 here is corresponding to credits, and also 59 over here is corresponding to row marks out of 100, right? And it even tells you that it should be both integers, not double, right? Kind of clarifies about what the types it should be. All good. So I would suggest we just copy this one here, only this part, and let's go back to the registration class in the model, right? So we just define the constructor for registration here. Oh, actually, I can just paste what I got, right? So let's go one by one. The first argument should be generalized into a parameter of type string. So this one should be the course, right? And the second one there should be 4. That should be number of credits, integer credits. And 59 should be the row marks. I'll say marks over here. Right, let me get things compiled first. All right, we got get course name, get number of credits, and also get marks over here. Right, you can see assert equals tells you this one here and this one here. So this CSE114 should be the expected value, which is a string. So that one should match the return type for get course name. And where should this get course name method go? Right, the way to judge it is by looking at the context objects. You can see the context object right now is R1, right? Let me write it down for you. This is so important for you to know where to put a method. Don't assume it's gonna be just put in the current class you're developing. Maybe not, right? So what you should really watch out for is, for example, if I got R1 dot get course name over here, and now R1 is the context objects of type. What you should do is go back there, and then you can see R1 was declared to be registration, right? Of type registration. So this tells you that this accessor, right, is going to return something. This one should be declared and defined in the registration class, right? And the same reasoning is going to go for all the other methods that we're going to do. All right, so all the same for these 3 methods, right? So why don't I just copy all these 3 so I can get a reminder. Let me go back to registration here. All right, so the first one I will need is the get course name, and that one should return a string, right? You can see this is a string over here. So I'm going to say public string and then get course name with no arguments, no parameters. And by default, I can just say return null because string is a reference type, just return some default value. So this one is done. And then the second one, public, and then you can see 4 here is integer. Integer get number of credits. If you don't feel confident about typing, you can also feel free to copy the name, right? That can be saver if you want. And let me just say return 0 for now. I just want compilation to pass first. I can program the logic a little bit later. Okay, so this one also done. And public, and then get marks is also going to return the integer, right? The integer get marks. Return also 0 for now. All right. And somehow they put some automatic imports for you. Just make sure you get rid of them. Normally, you should only see the package model for your model class. You shouldn't see anything about import. We don't really import anything into the model class because you are forbidden to use any Java API library. Remember, that's a part of the requirement for the test. All right, so now you can see for test number one, we got rid of all the compilation errors. So always, when you work on a particular test, always get rid of all the compilation errors first by declaring what's necessary, the minimum implementation by default, and then you try to program on the logic. All right, so now if I try to right-click on starter test over here, run as JUnit test, what do I have? Of course, it's a failure, not surprising. If you look into detail, I'll leave you to that. You can see that the return value from this currently is null. It's not really matching this. And this one here is also 0, which is not matching this, right? And what you really want to see the correct logic, you don't really want to make this method here always returning CSE114. You don't want to hard code it. You're going to fail the additional grading test very badly. So you don't want to do that. You want to program your methods in the most general way possible. So R1 here is going to basically pass whatever value that has been used to initialize the attributes, in this case, the course. And also get number of credits over here should return whatever initial value it is for the credits, the 4. And similarly, the return value from here should be corresponding to whatever we pass as argument to initialize the row marks. So this should be very standard definition. So let me just go back to registration here. Let me now just introduce the attributes here. So private string course, private integer credits, private integer marks. And then I'm going to initialize them one by one. This course, it will be course. This credits will be credits. And also this marks will be marks. So this will make sure when I call this constructor over here is going to initialize all of them properly. And now how can I be sure the accessor is going to return the corresponding value? In that case, we should really just return the corresponding attributes. So let's go to registration again. All right. So now I should really return this course. And over here, this dot credits. And this one should be this dot marks. Right. Let's now rerun the test. All right, we passed the first one. I would say for implementation like this, just defining some attributes as simple accessors and initialize the attribute, you should be quick on doing this, right? You can save some time for the harder methods during the test. All right. Something about line number 28. So what's the question? Any question from the chat? I saw you're talking about line number 28. What's about it?
Yeah, yeah, there was a line that was going through assert equals on line 28. I was just wondering what that syntax was. It disappeared after you implemented the methods in registration.
I think it could be, I'm not exactly sure, but anyway. So one thing to note, this starter test over here is slightly inaccurate because now we are comparing integer to integer. In which case, strictly speaking, we don't really need this tolerance over here. If you guys recall, when we said in the lecture, whenever you're comparing double numbers, like a fractional numbers, you need a tolerance. But in this case, we don't really need it. But that's okay. If the starter test already put it, you just leave it as is. Okay. Because the requirements over here already said they should be integers, not double. Okay. Maddie, question?
Yes. So in the comments, it says that the mark is out of 100. I was
Yeah.
wondering if you do need to input check for that, if they input something more than 100, because the test cases don't really check for that, but I'm not
Yes,
sure
that's correct.
for
That's
the
correct.
test.
So I would say these are whenever I say something you can assume, for example, here I say row marks should be out of 100. So that means we will not actually test you anything that's more than 100. That means you don't need to worry about it.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So I would say any explicit assumption that you might read in the test instruction, that means those are the inputs you can assume always will be the case, i.e., whenever you are being tested on some input, we will not give you anything that violates the assumption. Okay, just remember. All right, so now we're good. We have now passed the first test. Let's go on to the next one. All right, let's see. And the next one, let's say uncommon this, right? So we got error over here. So that one is about another constructor, right? You can see the constructor we just declared has 1, 2, and 3. More precisely, we got string, integer, integer. That's the one we defined. And now we got an overloaded version of the constructor, which would be string and integer, different one. And this one here, if you read the instruction here, it's going to be initializing some course and credits only. Whereas if you read the test case over here, for example, here, it says that in line number 39, by default, the marks should be 0, which means uninitialized. So let's now define this quickly, right? So now let's just go back to our registration class, right? You can put the constructor any way you like. The order of the methods or attributes in Java doesn't really matter, but it's good to group them in a logical way. All right, so now this overloaded version, we're going to get string, course, and also we have integer credits. Right, just to be sure, you can see here, we're only going to initialize the course and also credits, not the marks. So here, we can simply say this course is assigned to course. This credits is assigned to good. This will be perfect, I would say, during the test. But now that we are learning, I will show you one slight simplification to get rid of, it's a slight smell, very slight, not much. You can save this by saying, why don't I simply reuse the code over here? All right. To really call another constructor like a helper method, there will be a special syntax in Java, right? This will be something you can try maybe in your lab first. Don't try, if you're not confident, don't try this in the programming test. You cannot afford to create errors. You just say this, and then calling this as if is a method. So this tells you you're calling another constructor in the same class. And now I want to pass the course and pass the credits. And now in this particular overloaded version, what should be the value for marks? 0, right? So that means as if I'm passing 0 for the marks over here, right? So I can give 0. This will be the simplest way to do it. All right. I will leave both options to you to see whichever you like. Okay. All right. So I believe that's everything I need to do. Let's just give a try. Okay. 2 test cases done. All right. And let's now move on to test case number 3. All right, so here we got, okay, registration, we got the constructor done, and we seem to have a mutator. The reason that I said there should be a mutator is the method call is by itself. It's not being assigned to something else, or it's not being compared to something else. So it's not an accessor. It should be a mutator. So set marks is going to take some marks, right? Like an integer, right? You can also read the documentation here. So let's it's a simple mutator to define. Let's go to registration. Let's put that. I personally like to put mutator before accessor. You can choose whichever you like. So public void for mutator and the name. So now we're gonna generalize the argument 34 into some integer, right? This marks will be marks, because I know the set marks should really be setting this particular attributes accordingly, right? So let me go back here, and then if I run it, done. All right. Okay, let me see. There seems to be some question on the chat. Let me handle that. Are we only getting mark on the JUnit test available to us, or are there hidden tests? So I would suggest read your programming test 1 guide. That one explains about how you're going to be graded. Please take a look. All right, that one says exactly how you're going to be graded. But I can tell you, you're not only going to be graded by starter test. Starter test is only for you to get started, but to really make sure what you develop is correct according to the problem, we got something extra. So please read the programming test 1 guide. That one says explicitly. All right, so if no further question, let's move on. All right, so far it's still pretty easy. We haven't even got to the second class that uses an array, not yet. All right, so now let's uncomment the next one over here. All right. So this is the accessor method that we have to define again in the registration class based on the type of the context objects. And this will be the problem description, right? For this one here, I can copy that, right? And then we're going to get letter grade. And that one is going to return a string, F. And notice that in this starter test over here, we're only testing you on the letter grade F. That's only for a starter test. But in the actual grading test, we want to make sure you really satisfy the problem description. So that's why I said the starter test is only the minimum that you want to pass. But according to the problem description you're given, for example, here, letter grades A, B, C, D should also be covered as well by your implementation. So you are responsible for implementing your methods that 100% covers the problems that has been described to you. All right, copy that and then go back to your registration here. Let's now define this accessor. Okay, so let's now put here. Okay, it's called get letter grade. Let me maximize it. Okay, that's a problem description. And then we're going to have public string and then get letter grade, right? Let me just make sure I spell that properly. Okay, you can always go back and forth to check, right? Get letter grade. And then it's going to return the string. And I'm going to program in a way that's not going to work. That's going to work not only just for F, but also all the letter grades, all the other ones. All right, so that would be just some application of the if syntax, right? So let's try. And of course, to write an if, you can have different style. Let me just show you one of them. Let's say I got some string letter grades. Let's say initially I can say maybe null. And then eventually I want to return a letter grade. And I'm going to write some if conditional over here that's going to reassign the letter grade to be something that's not null, depending on which range it's going to fall into. All right, let's take a look. So I'm going to say if this the marks, right? Of course, the letter grade is going to depend on what the marks is, right? So this the marks, let's say if that's larger than or equal to 90, right? I'm basically just going according to the scheme over here, right? Larger than equal to 90, letter grade should be A plus. Else if, and of course, make sure you review the basic syntax for loop, while loop, and also for if statement, right? And then this dot marks larger than or equal to 80. Letter grade would be A. And then this marks larger than or equal to 70. So now I assume that you actually are familiar with how to write if, right, for Java. So in case you got trouble, reach out to me. Okay, letter grade will be B plus for this case. I think B. We don't have B plus, beg your pardon. Else if this marks will be larger than or equal to 60. So that one will be C. Yeah, make sure the case is also right. Else if this marks larger than or equal to 50, that one will be, letter grade will be D, right? And then we can have an else part here. That'll be the F. Else, and implicitly, of course, this will mean this marks will be the negation of this else if, right? Which would be less than. That will be LG will be F. So you can see that it's guaranteed. Initially, LG will just be null, but after this entire if statement here, it's guaranteed to be reassigned to some letter grade, depending on what the numerical marks is. Yeah, if you want to use switch, that's fine. If you feel comfortable with, it's completely up to you. That one, I have no preference. You can use if, you can use any conditional, that's no problem. All right. Let's now go back to starter test, right? Of course, I program in a way that's going to be general. So if there's any other additional grading test beyond the starter test, testing A plus A, B, C, D, I can also pass them, right? That's the point. You want to program, again, your method in a way that's general enough to handle every input scenario that are implied from the problem description. That's so important to note, right? You rerun the test cases. Yeah, I got 4 pass so far, right? Good. Okay, let me see if there's anything new on the chat. All right, so here, would the logic for the programming test be similar to lab 1 practice? It's a different problem. Maybe it's similar, but I would say your best preparation will be go over all the code structure that we cover in lab 0, lab 1, and also your practice test 1, and also the written notes. Maybe the problem itself is different, but nature of the program you got to write will be similar, right? Do we need to declare the letter grade over here as an attribute? That's a good question here. I would say you may make it work by declaring the letter grade over here as an attribute, which would be at the class level. And the consequence of declaring LG to be an attribute is it's going to be accessible by all the other methods in the same class, including, for example, let's say get number of credits. But that doesn't sound right. Why should this method here get access to the letter grade attributes, right? So you should only keep the variable here to the level or to the scope that's going to be relevant to its use. In this case, only this method here is going to use the variable. So that's why it shouldn't be an attribute. It's a design issue, and you shouldn't really use that. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I see. Yep. So if you're able to split, the test case file and then also the model file into different screen. Apparently we don't have 2 screen in the lab, but if you can maybe open by using some text editor, just the test file in the lab, it's up to you. I'll leave that choice to you. But to me, I'm okay, just switching between the tabs. Yeah. All right, next one. All right, the next one here, let's see. Uncomment this. Okay, get weighted grade point. Okay, of course, assuming that you gotta really read over this problem description here so you can actually program. Just remember getting things to compile, in which case you don't get any red cross in your projects, but getting things to get a green bar in the JUnits, you gotta make sure you program in a way that's logically correct, right? So these are 2 different issues. So now here let's fix the compilation error first. So this one saying, once we get the grade points, or it even tells you the formula, right? It's going to be the grade point multiplied by the number of credits. So what's really grade point? Grade point depends on the letter grade, which we just implemented, right? For example, let's say we got A plus, the grade point will be 9, multiplied by, let's say, 2030, it'll be 3 credits. That'll be 9 times 3 will be 27 credits, right? And you always want to read through the description here to really give you some example and then let you understand what you're supposed to program in order to get things right and get a green bar. All right, again, we're going to have a registration context object. So now this time we're going to program this method called get weighted grade point. Let me copy the method name so I don't make a typo. And then it's going to return an integer, right? Let's now go back here to registration. And let's now get another method here. Okay, so public and then integer, and then doesn't return, it returns an integer. But now, let me just say return 0, just to get everything compiled. Because sometimes a single test method might require you to make multiple fixes to get compilation to work. But now just one, I want to be sure. And of course, if I now try to rerun the test cases, this one is interesting. It is because at the moment, the mark is simply the grade point. Let me see. Okay, when I first create this registration here, let me see 5. The result is expecting to be 0, right? Because right now I have the letter grade being, if you look at that 49, the letter grade is supposed to be F, right? 49 F, so that the grade point should be 0. And so that's why 0 times the number of credits over here should be 5. That should be 0. So I'm getting this test case here just for free, just because I type in the default implementation. However, that's not general enough because it might pass the starter test, but if I gave you anything additional to really test the real logic, your method implementation here might just fail, right? It's okay for now, but as soon as we get to more test cases, you have to make sure you actually implement more. All right. Let me just move on for now because now I got a green bar. So here, this one just worked for free, but we should really try other values. It seems to me the next one here is already about transcript, right? So the starter test only gave you this simple input here, right? So I would suggest we want to program in a general way. So why don't we try to do it properly, right? You can see even there's a hint over here. You should also work for other input values, right? That's why. Okay, let's now try to program that more properly. Let's give it a try. So what we should do is let's now try to, the idea will be we want to get the credits and also grade point. How do we know the grade point? The grade point will depend on the get letter grade. All right. So I would suggest we get things ready now. So just remind ourselves, weighted grade point is equal to grade point multiplied by number of credits, right? That's a formula we got from the problem description. What's the letter grade? So we can say string letter grade will be, so now we can calculate the letter grades right away from the method that we just defined in the same, in the same class. So I can say this dot get letter grade, calling the some method in the same class. Okay, that's the letter grade. And now based on this letter grade, we have to work out exactly what's the grade point. So what I would say is we can do something very similar to the structure over here. So let me again use if and else if. So I can say integer, let's say grade point. All right, let's say 0. But we expect to really do some if statement here in line number 76, starting from there. And eventually, what do we want to return? We want to return the grade point, the local variable, times this dot credits. Right? You can notice that I cannot say this dot GP. It's not going to compile because the GP here is not an attribute. It is a local variable, for which case you cannot use this, right? That's something we also review in the lectures. Okay, just to mention to you. All right, let's now calculate this GP. So again, we're going to say if, how do we compare string? We're going to say LG dot equals, if that's equal to A plus, and then the GP is going to be reassigned to 9. Again, if you want to use switch or any other conditional statements other than if, else, if, be my guest. That's fine. LG the equals, and then this time it will be A, right? And then GP will be 8. Else if, I'll show you one more thing. Once this is done, I can show you that maybe during the test, you may also want to consider writing some extra test cases yourself. I'll show you how you can do it by easily just copy and pasting and make some slight modification. I'll do that. Okay, else if LG the equals, and then letter grade B. So now GP will be 7. And the next one, else if LG the equals A, B, C, and GP will be 6. Else if LG the equals, oh, sorry, equals, and then we got D getting there. GP will be 5, and the final one will be for F. You can say else if you want to say else. I'll leave it up to you. But in this case, we're assuming that whatever marks that's given to us will be valid. So we can be confident about using else. So else part really implies LG the equals over here should be F, right? So now we can say else GP will be 0. All right. That's how it works. All right. So Of course, if I rerun the test, it will still pass, right? But I want to be more confident. For example, can I just create a test myself? I can. I can say, for example, I can copy this one here. And then, so let's say test 14, let me say test 14B. Okay, for now. And I can have the similar setup over here, but now I might say my marks over here rather than 49, which correspond to F. Why don't I try maybe corresponding to D? In that case, I'll just make 50, for example, right? 50 is a D. In that way, it's going to get 5 as a grade point rather than 0. And then the credits over here remains to be 5, or you can change that to be something else, but that should be the expected value instead, right? Let's give it a try. All right, passing. All right. So I would say you don't necessarily have to give extra tests for every test you have in the starter. So only those you believe you should also test to make sure your method actually works. Okay. All right, so far so good. Will there be any exceptions? No. If you read the programming test one guide, exceptions are not covered in your programming test one. All right. Good. You're welcome. All right. So guys, let's now move on to the next one. Right. I think now we can start programming a little bit about array. Sorry. I would say as soon as you see that a class which requires some expected value like an array, you know that we're moving on to maybe a different class or maybe the same class, but that is going to instantiate the programming pattern that we have been doing. Right? So apparently we need a new class over here, transcript. Why don't we do that? So I'm going to go back to the model package over here, and then I'm going to say new and class transcript. All right. And then I fixed this one already. And now the transcript is going to require some string arguments. So this will be the name. Right? So if you actually go above the problem description, I believe it says something like each transcript is characterized by a student's unique name. So in this case, Alan, right? That's how I know. And then it should be storing up to 60. So that tells us about the upper bound in the array, right? We can do that right away, not just to get things compiled, but let's now move on. Right, let's get a constructor here. Okay, let me now do multiple things right now. Okay, so new transcript. So now let me close registration for now. Okay, let's just go to transcript. So I'm gonna say public transcript is going to be string some student name, right? Apparently I will need some corresponding attributes. Private string name. I can say this, the name would be name. And now let me do a little bit more, even though that's not required maybe just yet by the starter test, but I can do something. It's going to be good for later. If I go back to the starter test, you can see again, there's problem description here. Each transcript is characterized by username, the name of the students. That's something we have done. And also a list of up to 60. We needed an array, initially 60 slots. Let's go back here. So what we can do here is to create this particular array. Well, declare that first as an attribute. That's going to be shared by many methods. Well, I would say here, you can either hard code 60 in the constructor, or if you want a little bit better practice, you can define a constant. Let me do the better practice for now. I can say private integer. You can even say final because that's supposed to be a constant. Let me just private integer for now. I can say final, yes. So final means it's a constant, though maximum doesn't really change. You can say maximum number of registration. Will be 60, right? And then also we got the array. Private registration. Oops, sorry, if I can spell properly. And then also the counter, right? It always goes side by side with the array. Integer number of registration, right? You can make a comment if you want to. Number of registration. Let's now initialize the array right away. Otherwise, you might run into null pointer exception later. So you can say this dot registration will be new registration, right? This is something we have done multiple times so far, right? In your tutorial, in the written notes, in your lab one, so many times. Registration, and then, so here I can just copy this constant over here and pass it, right? And then this NOR, if you don't really do anything to it, it will just be default value 0. But if you want explicitly to say that should be 0. Okay. So these are the three things we can do. Okay. So why do we put, okay, from the chat, so why do we put the initial size of the array as this guy here rather than NOR, right? As you can see, NOR over here is just an attribute that we want to initialize. The default value is 0. So that means you're creating, if you put NOR here instead, it's going to be an empty array, which cannot be store anything because no index will be valid for empty array. So that's why you have to do this, right? If you do this one here, it's going to initialize an array of length 60, and then you can add one by one according to the value for NOR. And for visualization, that's something we have done in the class and in the tutorial. So you may want to refer to the also the in-lab demo that we visualize how this is going to work. Okay, I hope I answered that question. Okay. All right, so let's go back there. All right, so we got another method here to implement, but we have done quite a bit, for later methods. Let's say if we got get report over here, so that should be an accessor in Allen. Allen, you can see is a transcript. So get report should really go to the transcript class. And then that should return an array, right? So get report basically is going to return the number of, the get report is going to return an array, and the length of the array, in this case 0, should correspond to how many registrations are already stored in the transcript. That's also something we have done in the tutorial and the written notes. So what we should do is, let me just program that method properly right away. The public, and then registration array, and copy the name, get report. The length of the return array should correspond to the number of registration objects stored in registrations array. All right. So now how do we do that? You need a local variable here. So you just say registration over here. Let me maximize it. Okay, registration, let's say report that we want to return. What should be its length? It should really correspond to the number of registration we have stored so far. And we do have that. That would be the integer counter, right? That's part of the pattern. This dot NOR. And of course, I made a typo. All right, and then we're going to eventually return the report. But now we want to make sure if there's anything that's in the actual registrations array, then we are actually going to store that into the output array one by one. So we need a loop. Integer I 0. And you should know very well from your previous tutorial, I less than this dot NOR. You cannot say this dot registrations dot length. Why? You should really refer to your notes on that. That's something which we covered also multiple times. Okay, refer to it. And then I plus plus. You really want to make sure you understand why the bound over here should be this NOR. Otherwise, you might just forget if you don't understand it. If you put another possibility there, then you might just run into logical errors in your programming test. All right, so here we're going to say report array I is assigned to this dot registration I. All right, so that'll be the general way to handle get report. So this can make sure the return array has the length corresponding to how many registration objects are currently stored in the array. May not be up to all the way to index 59. May not be. Okay. If you go back to starter test, this one is just trivial. This one just for size 0. Just in the beginning, nothing's there in the array. All right, I got a green bar. Okay. And then what about the next one? Okay, let me uncomment this. Before that, let me look at the chat. All right, I already answered the second last question there. The array is initialized to null. Not too sure what you're referring to, but if you look at the transcript over here, it's not null. If you didn't have this line number 11, then it would be null, of course. But if you had this line here and make sure you pass the right length over here, then it will be good. So it's going to be an array of size 60, but in the beginning, from index 0 all the way to index 59, they will all store null in the beginning. But the array itself is not null. Let's now go back to here and let me uncomment this. Okay. Okay, we got still more, but I'll make sure I finish that, right? Okay, we got add registration, and that one should be just routine, right? You want to get a new, add a new registration objects. Okay, I do see some question there. Give me a moment, but let me finish this one. This one will be quick. Again, it's part of the pattern. So public void and add registration. Right, some R over here. And then what should we do? Well, store that object there to the registrations array. And then where should it store? It will depend on what the counter is. And you don't want to just memorize it. You want to know why it is the case. We explained that also in the notes and the tutorial, right? Make sure you review that. This NOR will be assigned to R. And then make sure you update the counter. If you didn't do either, you're going to run into trouble for the logical error. All right, that's what we should do. If I go back there, start a test, if I simply try, all right, passed. Because this test here is just to make sure you program the add registration method properly. Okay. All right, I got two questions here. Can you tell how to do it faster, as most of us completed the test, so we actually have a basic idea. Sorry, I don't quite see the question. You want me to be faster, or I don't quite see the question. So most of you completed the test, so we actually have a basic idea on how to do these. Oh, faster. You know what? I'm doing this, for everybody. So there might be some of your classmates who might find this just the right pace. If you really find it too slow, sorry, bear with me. I gotta do at this speed. For maybe your other classmate, maybe they find this just the right speed or even too fast, right? Bear with me. So here, which video notes explain I less than this NOR in further detail? Okay, so you should really go back to the point tester written notes PDF, and I'm pretty sure I explained that in Lab 0 Part 2 as well. Okay. Good. Okay, I agree. So if you actually want to complete this test yourself, you got to be faster than how I did it. But for now, my purpose is not to complete this test in 1 hour. My purpose is to really guide you guys through the solution. It's a different purpose. Otherwise, I can just remain silent without explaining anything, right? It's a different purpose. I just want you guys to really make sure you understand every step I'm doing here and every tip I'm giving to you. So when you practice yourself, definitely set a timer for yourself, maybe 15 minutes or maybe even faster. Okay. All right. So let's now move on to the next one. Next one. All right. For this one here, we just need another method here. You can see this is the only compilation error I have. It's also called add registration. Apparently, it's a overloaded method. The one we programmed earlier is taking a registration objects, but now we are taking some information that would be enough for us to create some registration objects internally and add it to the registrations array, right? That's also something we spoke about. right? Let me copy that and let's still do that. Okay, go to transcript over here, and we can potentially use some helper method call. The public void at registration. So now it's going to be, rather than registration objects, string, and it will be the name of the course. And also sticks, I believe it will be the number of credits. Yeah, exactly. You can see, you can confirm that, right, from the documentation. Number of credits. All right, integer number of credits. Right, so there are different ways you can do this. I'll show you both. The longer way, which is completely fine, in the test setting, you can say, you can create the registration object first. Registration R would be new registration, and then name and also credits, right? That's one of the methods, and one of the constructors we programmed earlier. And then you can either try to repeat these two lines by using R, or you can call this as a helper method. I'll show you that. That also something we set in class. This dot add registration, and then I can put R. And if you really want to save that, have a single line, I'll comment this out. You can do anonymous object here. You can cut this one here and paste it over here, right? That will also do. This will be the simplest way. Okay, I'll leave it to you. If you feel comfortable about writing this, feel free. Okay, let's now rerun the test cases. Green bar. All right. All right, next one. So here, let's uncomment this. So we got another method to program. So this one here is a mutator because it's by isolation. It's just by itself over here. And that one there is taking basically an array of registration. So that means rather than taking a single registration object like before, we're going to take an array of registration objects. Okay, I'm going to show the solution directly. So the idea would be we're going to go over a loop that we're going to program the loop in this method here. And that way it's going to go over the parameter registration here one by one. And for each iteration, we're going to call add registration. Okay, that's something we're going to do. All right, let me copy the name here and then go there. Okay, this will be the third variant here. Okay, so public void registrations. So now it's going to be a registration array. So here, I would say you may want to choose a different name, because now we don't really want this registration to be directly assigned to the attribute here. So we don't want to have a clash of the name. You don't want to. So we can say maybe just a list if you like. All right, that's something we're going to do. So what do? We're just going to go for integer I would be 0, I less than the list length. If you like, why don't we say array? Array length doesn't matter. And then I'm going to go over the array one by one. And then for each one of them, I'm going to get some registration objects from there. Oh, by the way, again, how do I know this should be a registration array? It's because if I go back to the starter test over here, you can see when this method was called in the starter test, it's being passed registrations. And that one there is declared to be a registration array. That's how I know how to define the parameter. Okay, let's now move on. All right, so I'm going to go over one by one, and let me show you the slightly longer way that might be easier to understand. So for each iteration, I'm going to retrieve the registration objects are from the array. And once I've got this, I can say this dot add registration, right? So that's the method I defined earlier over here, right? And now I can just say that. That's one way to do. And if you feel more comfortable, you can feel free to simplify this. I'm going to give you that version as well. Let me comment this out. So what I can do is, so now I'm just going to, not having an intermediate variable, I'm just going to pass directly over here. That's also going to work. Okay. Choose the one you feel more comfortable. All right. So now everything's done. And let's now see. Okay. Green bar. All right. Let's move on. So now the next test. Let me see how many more. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got 6 more. All right. Let me just do 2 more, and then I can mention another important tip for you. Let me do 2 more. All right. As you can see, once I uncomment this, nothing I need to do compilation-wise because every method have been programmed already. So I might just want to see if my implementation so far is going to be okay. Click OK. Because when I program, for example, the add registration methods earlier, I try to do it in a way that's as general and as complete as possible. So that's why I somehow just get this test to pass for free. So my earlier efforts really pays. All right, how about next one? If I try to uncomment this one here, and then I got something called get marks over here. Okay, how about this? Let me mention the tip over here. And let me write it down on the iPad. Okay, so to be very explicit, this will be a very important tip. To avoid compilation errors penalty around 15 minutes before the test ends on comments all the remaining tests. Okay, number 1, uncomment all the remaining tests, which I'll show to you. And number 2, declare all the required classes or methods. And of course, if the method is actually an accessor, you may want to supply some implementation, like a return now, for example. If accessor supply default implementation. This tip is also mentioned in your programming test 1 guide, so you may want to also read it through. All right, so I would say once you have done this, find this tip over here. Let's say you have got all the remaining tests uncommented and also make sure there's no compilation error. And then if you got time left, you can go back and try to pass the remaining test cases. The idea will be you don't want to get compilation error penalty, right? At this state, at this point. Let me do exactly what I said. So now let me just uncomment everything, right? So let's say this 31 will be where my 15 minutes are left, let's say. Okay, okay, let me just go all the way to the end over here, and then I'm gonna say uncomment. All right. You can see I do have a few more methods that to be declared, right? So that why don't we do that? The first one is going to be in the transcript class, and that one is going to be about get marks. That one is going to take a string and also return some integer, right? And the logic, you can read it. Okay. So let's now go back to transcript over here. So what I will do is I'm going to have public, and I know that one's going to return integer, string, the name of the course. I can put course over here. And return some default value. Let's say 0. All right. That one can fix the compilation error for this one here. So that one compile. You can see this test also compile. All right. And set marks is the next compilation error to fix. And that one should also belong to the transcript class. And that one apparently is a mutator, right? That one will take a string, course name, and also the marks. The marks to be set as a new mark. So let's go to transcript over here. And then I'm going to go to public void set marks, right? And the first one here will be a string, and then the course, and integer, the marks. All right. And let's go back here. Yeah, you can see the set marks has been it's now compiling. That's good. Let's see anything else. All right, I think the final method we got to get done will be get weighted GPA, right? So this one here, again, in the transcript class, and that one there is actually going to return, you can see a double, right? You can see here, this expression here is a double value. And we also got some tolerance over here. So that tells you it's a double, all right? Let's go back here and go back to transcript over here. I believe that'll be the last method we have to declare. And double, like that. And of course, I gotta get rid of this and return 0.0 just for now. All right, so now if you go back here, you can see now I have no compilation error. So this can ensure I'm not gonna get any compilation error penalty on my submitted code, right? You can see this one here didn't take me that long to really get things fixed. So this is really something you want to really do, right? So you want to really force yourself to say, I only got about 15 to 20 minutes left. And now I should really spend about 5 minutes or so to get everything just compiled first. And now I got some time left so that I can go back to where the first test is going to fail, but I'm going to fix it, right? Let's try. All right, so now I get a red bar, but I don't have any compilation error. Okay, so hopefully I can finish everything within 15 minutes, right? So if you can stay, feel free to stay. If you have to leave, that's okay. I'm going to make the recording available later tonight or early tomorrow morning. Okay, but we don't have much left. So now the first test that actually failed is 31. Let's go there. I'm failing this assert equals. Of course, we only got some default implementation here. We basically are going to look for this particular course and search for get its mark, right? And you can also see some description over here. So now if you see 31 and 35 over here, they're related. Of course, this one is telling that if the course exists, you're going to get a corresponding mark. If the course doesn't really exist, you're going to return -1, right? I can do these two test cases together. In the actual test, feel free to do one at a time. That's okay. Do we need to override the toString method? Not for this practice test, but I would say for you don't really have to. So remember, for example, in your program, let's say in your lab number 1, so the method that you're supposed to return your string, I don't really use the toString method. I just call maybe get description or get update, something like that. So you don't really have to. But for this practice test, we also don't need a toString method. We don't need it. Okay. So guys, one thing you really want to also pay attention, I think for your lab number 1, so there is certain like a string accessor, which is going to return the status of the objects, like how many, for example, how many updates you actually have in the app. You want to also get used to program that kind of stuff, right? For your lab number 1. That's also going to be useful for your programming test 1. All right, so let's now go back to transcript. I'm going to implement the get marks method. And this is also something we did, in the tutorial or in the written notes. All right. So what I want to have is, let's say, integer the marks, right? If you read the logic over there, you can see that if the course doesn't exist, it's going to be -1, right? So why don't I assign some default value over here to say -1 in case it doesn't exist? And I'm going to return the marks at the end, right? So now I'm going to have a loop to go over the registration objects in the transcript one by one. Integer I will be 0, a very standard way to go over the array. I strictly less than this dot number of registration. Again, not the length of the array. I plus plus. All right, I can say if this dot registration index I, that one is going to, so this expression here is going to be a registration objects. And for registration, I can say get marks. Sorry, get course, beg your pardon. Get course name. And that one there is going to be a string. Dot equals. And what should be the course? Exactly the course over here, right? Maybe for this line, I will explain a little bit to help you, but give me a moment. And then over here, once I got that, I need to say this registration I dot set marks. Beg your pardon, not yet. Sorry for confusing you. I was even thinking about ahead. So now here, the marks over here that we have as a local variable should be reassigned. That one should be assigned to this registration I get marks. So this will be the correct solution. Okay. However, if you find a little bit more difficult to run this one here, understand this here, let's talk about it very quickly. Okay, to help you. So for this one here, let's give it a try. So that one there goes like this. This dot registration at index I, and then dot get, I believe, course name. Let me be precise. Get course name, and then equals. The get course name, and then dot equals. It's a long expression, but it's not too bad. And then over here, we got a string parameter course, right? So the this over here is referring to the transcript class. Right? Because we are talking about the method in that class. And then the registration over here. So this registration is the registration array. And then we want to go to a particular index, right? Only up to here. That one is going to give us just a single registration, right? And in the registration class, we got a method called get course name, right? That one is going to return a string. So that will be the final part. Okay, let me move that a little bit. There we go. All right, so that one there is going to give us a string. So now string dot equals another string is going to give us some Boolean to see if the course name matches. That is going to, do whatever that's necessary, right? So this is the kind of analysis you can make, you can perform to analyze the method call. Dot notation. All right, I hope that's clear. All right, let's then move back here. And you can simplify this slightly if you want to. Let me do that now that we are really helping you. So let's try this. Hopefully I can finish by 8:30. Okay. All right, so for this one here, I think for this part over here, you can see this part over here, the expression, and also this part over here of the expression, they are the same. So this might be a place where we can create some local variable of this expression here, and we can reference it, and we can reuse it. So this will be the scenario where you may want to have an extra variable. So I can say registration R will be this dot registrations at index I. All right. And now I can replace this guy here by R. I can also replace this guy over here by R. So this fragment here, registrations at index I. Oh, of course. Sorry. I should put that inside the loop. Of course. What it was complaining was when I put this line here outside the loop, I cannot really get access to the loop counter. Of course, it should be inside the loop. All right. All right, so everything's good. And you can see now I'm using the local variable R over here. I'm referencing to it more than one time, which is good. It's a good use of the local variable. Okay, let's now go back to start a test over here. And then if I click on that, I'm still having some error, but you can see 31 is no longer my issue, right? So now if I go to 36, I'm now getting something, let's see here. Yeah, so now I just need to program this set marks, which I haven't done. So the one I was worried about before the test, I believe 31, now it's passed, right? I don't need to worry about it. And I basically pass both this one here and also this one over here for non-existing course at the same time. Okay. And now what I need to do is to make sure the set marks is done properly. Okay. And now if I go back there, it's going to be very similar. And now I can give some exercise once I'm done with this. Okay. It's more or less the same. I can copy the code here. Very similar. Okay. So now rather than accessor, it's going to be a mutator, void, and set marks. And it's going to be the course I want to set the marks for, and also what should be the new marks. Right? Let me be sure that's really what it is expecting. If you go back here, you can see the set marks over here. It will be argument number 1, the course, argument number 2, the marks to be set for the new marks. If I go back to transcript over here, so now I don't need this anymore because I don't want to return the marks, right? Okay, let me just make it a little bit simple here. And I still need to go over the registration as before. And now if I got a matching course, rather than getting the marks, now I want to set the marks. So I'm going to say r.set marks, right? And then I don't need to return anymore. And of course, in the test, if you can easily get confused by this, you shouldn't really just copy and paste. Maybe what you should have done would be you just try to program from scratch, all right? Okay, let's see what errors do I have. Duplicates. Oh, of course. This is something I created earlier, which now duplicates, right? That's okay. I can get rid of it. All right. Not a big issue. All right. So that's the correct implementation. And exercise for you quickly. If you can see that this get marks and the set marks over here, they share quite a bit of code in common, especially about the pattern over here for the loop and registration here. So that means my code right now smells a bit. For the programming test purpose, you don't really need to fix this. That's okay, as long as it works. But if you want to be a little bit more perfect, exercise for you. How to get rid of the code duplicates from get marks and set marks. You might need some helper method. I'll leave that to you. That's also something we cover in the in-lab demo. You can take a look. All right, so now let me go back to start the test. And if I run it again, right, I got only one test case left. All right, let's now finish that one as for completeness, right? We're almost done. All right, for this one here, let's see. Basically, it's failing this get weighted GPA. Yeah, of course, because I haven't programmed that. I only put in the header. And you're going to read through this documentation, of course, but assuming that I have read it, so now I should really program it, right, for the calculation. If I go to here, rather than returning 0, I'm now going to program some logic, right? So the idea will be we want to get weighted GPA, grade point average, basically, right? The grade point average also you need to be weighted. So that means we want to also consider the credits of the course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say integer weighted rated grade points first, and then divided by the number of credits, basically. 0. Let me make a comment here. Total number of weighted grade points. And if you remember what weighted grade point is, it's grade point multiplied by number of credits. That's what we did earlier in the registration class, right? We're going to reuse it pretty soon. So we're going to go over the list of registrations. Integer I0, I less than this NOR. Again, we're just using this pattern over and over. I plus plus. All right, we're going to say the weighted grade points plus equal, right? This registrations at index I, and we can reuse the method that we programmed earlier. Let me just refer you to that very quickly. All right. If you recall, from registration, we did program a method earlier called get weighted grade points. All right, so now we're going to say dot get weighted grade points. And then we're gonna return, right? Now, in order to calculate the weighted GPA, right? We have to say, well, what we are missing is the A part, which is average, right? So if you only do GPS rated grade points divided by this NOR, okay, this is wrong. Okay, this is wrong. Dividing an integer by another integer will only give. This is actually from your first year. For example, if I write in Java 5 divided by 2, it's going to give me only 2, the quotients, not 2.5. In order for me to get 2.5, I need to convert one of them into a double, right? Just remember, okay? So I'm going to leave this as a comment for you. So I'm going to say return, let's say, still got the same GPS, this.NOR. There are different ways for you to do this, right? The easiest way is to cast this particular expression over here to be this variable here to be double. This will be the simplest way. Just do it at the end. Let me see what I have over here. Undefine the operator. Oh, sorry, typo. Beg your pardon. Double. Okay. So let me recap over here. If you only do integer divided by integer, you can see this guy here is integer. All right. And also this NOR is also integer. You'll be something like a 5 divided by 2. It will only give you the quotients. It's not going to be, as you can see, the expected value here. It will be something like a fractional number. It's not, I even give you hints over here in the starter test. So what you really want to do is you want to convert one of the operands over here, either the left operand or the right operand here to double, right? I just did one of them for you. Alternatively, if you really want to keep this expression over here, you can also do that. All you gotta do is you may want to say rather than integer over here, you can put as double. That's also fine. All right. That will be something to do with a numerical division. If you got trouble understanding it, let me know. Okay. So now I'm done. Let me just go back to the starter tests over here and then rerun everything. Right now I got all the test cases passed, right? So you can see the whole workflow now. Of course, I'm trying to explain things along the way. That's why it takes much longer. So in your case, you will have to isolate yourself, to reattempt the test. And let me mention again the most important tip, right? Two things over here. Number one, in the beginning of the test, you want to comment out everything except for the very first test and do one thing at a time. For every individual test, you want to get rid of the compilation error first by defining the required methods, classes, default implementation, and then you're gonna program the logic to make sure you get a green bar and do this one by one. And the tip I gave to you is to really avoid compilation error penalty, you really want to leave yourself enough time. I would say at least 15 minutes to say wherever you are, you want to uncomment all the remaining methods and make sure you fix the compilation errors around that time. And if time permits, you can go back to program the logic like what I did and get a green bar. That's what you should do. All right. All right. So that's about it. I think I walked through thoroughly the solution to you. So do you guys have any questions? I don't mind spending another 5 minutes or longer. Any question you would like to follow up?
I have a question, but it's not related to practice test one. Is that okay?
It's related to what?
It's a general question about lab one.
Lab one, you can try. Okay, try, and then I'll see if I should answer that now. Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. You were telling us, I'm not sure exactly where, that we would get feedback for lab one on the EECS submit website, but when I went there, I didn't see any feedback.
Right. So far, the only feedback I gave to you guys was the programming test one. That was the one I released the other day. I think the TA is still grading your lab one. Remember, your lab one was only submitted on Friday. So somehow
Uh-huh.
the TA didn't really work during the weekend. So I already dropped in an email. So hopefully they will get back to me, hopefully pretty soon tomorrow. So once we have graded your lab one, we're gonna release the feedback, just like your programming test one. So I'm hoping to get back to you on this by the end of tomorrow. Lab
All right,
one.
that sounds good. And is that
Yeah.
the same for the first written test as well?
Mhm.
All right. No worries. Thank you.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Written test one, yes, I'm gonna release the result early tomorrow. You can also expect to see the result. Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Great.
All right, sounds good. All right, any other follow-up you would like to ask? Okay, I'll pause for just one more moment in case you guys have question.
Sir,
Sorry,
oh,
Yeah, go ahead. Any question? Go ahead. Speak up, please.
yes. So when I did my practice test one, it didn't. So when I got my result, it said the project didn't compile. So I didn't actually get to the second transcript class, and I didn't create it. So is that why it didn't compile?
Yes, most likely. So it's a good question here. I think if you didn't really create, let's say, the transfer class, what's going to happen is when you were submitted model package containing only the registration class, that would not compile with the original starter test, which does refer to the transcript. That's why it wouldn't compile. So that's really back to the tip I gave to you guys over here. So I would say again, leave yourself 15 minutes or so at the before the end of the test to make sure you uncomment all the test cases and then go one by one to make sure you fix all the compilation error. Yeah, otherwise, when we receive your submitted code and if your submitted model package does not really compile with the original starter test, you're gonna get some compilation error penalty because your project is supposed to compile at least. Mhm. Does it make sense to you? I hope.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
good.
sorry, Prof, for the programming tests one, do we have to write extra test cases?
Okay, so do you need to write extra test cases? I would say you're not required. You're not going to be graded for any for not writing any extra test cases, or even if you write extra ones, you're not also going to be graded on the extra test cases. I mean, for the ones you write. So I would say, but sometimes you might find the need to say once you have finished programming your particular method, you might find that the starter test themselves may be incomplete. There might be certain inputs that are very obvious from the problem description, but the starter test didn't really test them, in which case you may want to try it out yourself to make sure
Okay.
your methods have been programmed completely for
So
all the.
just when you show us like how you implement another one.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I would say,
Okay.
if you're confident, with the way you program your methods, maybe also in the interest of time, you may not want to write some extra ones, but I would say sometimes it might be necessary for you to write.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Can I ask another unrelated one?
Go ahead.
I had trouble importing the lab one grading tests, the extra ones, into my current project.
Okay.
I was wondering if you could show that quickly.
Sure. That's not exactly irrelevant because lab one should be also relevant to your programming test one. Okay. Okay, maybe I'll show you here quickly. Okay, how about here? What you should do is if you go to the E class and then if you go under lab instructions,
Right.
lab one grading test, okay? That one should be a zip file. And then if you save it, it should be here. Let's give a try. All right. If I open it, basically these are all the Java files, right? So let me just try on the practice test. Of course, it's not going to compile, but this is what you should do. Basically, you're going to move the folder here. The easiest way is to launch your project for lab one, and then you can select everything from here and just drag and drop to the JUnit test. That's what you got to do to the JUnit test package. And once you have done that, for example, let me not do it because it's not going to compile now, but that's what you got to do. So you're going to drag and drop everything in the JUnit test package once you unzip it to the JUnit test package. Once you have done that, everything should compile, and then you're going to right click on the all test.java, right click on that and say run as Java test. It's going to run everything, including the starter test.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
No problem. It should be very straightforward. That one should be no trick. Yeah. And you will do the same for practice test 1. That's something you will do as well. Okay. All right, guys. Any other questions? If no, okay, thank you for staying. And then I hope this really helps. You still have some time to really get some extra practice. And then, yeah, so I'll see you in class on Tuesday then. But I still got my office hour tomorrow, Monday, over Zoom, and also Tuesday, if you still want to speak to me. More than welcome to. Okay, I'll try to make the recording available soon. If not tonight, maybe early tomorrow. I'll do that. All right. Have a good night. I'll see you later.
All right, good night.
Guys, take care. Bye-bye.